Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Artist Block. My name is NoodleDog and today we're going to start sketching. Last video we talked about thumbnails, and all my previous videos on this particular series were building up your confidence in how to create pieces or how to take little concepts and build them together to make your repertoire a little bit better. So people that are actually starting art or who might be just refreshing with my series, welcome to the real stuff. I decided that we're just going to jump right into it. And while I'll still be teaching concepts and stuff like that I use for the most part, this is a good place to just jump into the creativity aspect. So, we talked about thumbnails last time, and that was basically talking about developing your pieces before you start working on them. Well, today we're starting on them. And normally, as you can see right here, if you're doing digital art, you have a blank canvas before you start picking up your preferences and things like that. You could see on my left, I have all of my different tools that I like to use, all of my stuff that I enjoy using. On my right, I have my layers, I have my navigation. This is Clip Studio EX. I use this for all my drawing, for my animating, for my comics. This is an all-in-one program, and it's pretty sweet. I recommend it if you're going to be using, if you're going to be serious about making comics or making art. This is a good product to use. You could also use Paint Tool Sci. I know a lot of people that use that. I'm not good at Sci. I never downloaded it, so I recommend this. You have to pay for this though, but you don't have to. If you're a traditional artist, usually you start out with a piece of paper, or you might be using a piece of paper that may have something on it, and you might be using an edge, or you might be using just a bit of white space that you want to fill up. So this is usually how you start. You usually might have your tools like your ink, your pencils, your paint, or your what have you on any other way. You might be holding it, you might be having it set aside. If you're using watercolor, you might have a little bowl of water. But normally, you start off with a blank screen or a blank piece of paper. So we're going to start off and we're going to talk about a couple of preferences that we usually discuss when we talk about creating your setup for anything. So first thing you want to do if you're doing digital art or traditional art is figure out how you're going to set up your page. When it comes to me personally, I take a lot of consideration as to how I'm going to set up my page, and sometimes people don't really do that, but it's something that you might want to keep in mind. Do I want to keep my page wide or narrow and long? And it just depends on how you feel you're going to set up your preferences. So for me, I'm going to show you how I walk through this, and I'm just going to go to File, go to New right here, and it's going to pop up a little screen and it's going to show different preferences. Now on Clip Studio, you have options to pick out if you want to do comics or if you want, and I can't even see, I don't have my glasses on. Printing of something, you have show comic settings, and then they have animation. We're just going to stick to illustration over here because it's what we're doing today. And you can look down here and you can see that I have my custom setting on, and I can just pick out whatever pixels I want to use. Let's just say for the sake of argument, let's do 1080 by 1920. That's the standard high definition setup. And normally on digital, I recommend not using a white background. On paper, it's fine to have a white background because it's not going to be blasting you with rays or anything except for perhaps color or a lack of color, therefore. But on a screen, the white can be pretty jarring, and it can be pretty bad on your eyes. So you want to probably switch it to maybe a toned, but that could be fine. Let's do a toned gray, because I'm working on gray paper recently. And looking at this now, I don't really like how much space I have. I'm going to go ahead and make it, let's do 1920 by 1920. That might be, let's do that and see what that looks like. Okay, pretty square. We can work with that. If you want to change the name of your thing, go ahead and do that. For right now, I'm just going to point it as illustration. This is just going to be kind of spontaneous. Boom. Presto Changio, you've got yourself a new canvas. So this is how we start. For this particular canvas, I can't really change anything as far as the width and the height. It's going to be pretty much the same. It's pretty uniform. It's square. I can't really change it. If you're using traditional, you might want to consider, do I want to keep it as landscape, or do I want to kind of trade it into a portrait type? Portrait being more narrow and landscape being more wide. It just depends on your setup or what you're trying to draw. From here, you go ahead and you can start drawing. I don't usually start drawing randomly, but today we're going to try to make an exception for it, and we're going to try to do a little bit of a sketch. Sketches are usually loose. If you're not into sketching, that's perfectly fine. Some people are more draftsmen, and they can definitely make really nice and high quality pieces just by jumping into it. But some people like me, who are not too great at that, are really good at sketching out first. And that's the first thing we're going to do today. We're going to sketch out something, and we're going to figure out what we're going to do with it after. We're going to probably line it and color it, and I'll go through that in separate videos. Today though, let's just sketch. So I have a pencil that I like using. It's on Clip Studio. Clip Studio has a software hub that you can download tools and pencils and all kinds of stuff like that on, and I found this. I don't remember the name of it. It's in Japanese, I believe, so I believe that it's really good. I like using it a lot. So you want to keep in mind also your pen size and setting. Notice as how big this setting is for such a small piece compared to maybe a 15, which is what I usually work on my bigger pieces. Look at how big this is. You get a lot of detail, but also you can get really thin if you lighten up your pen touch. And usually when it comes to, you know, practicing, I tend to do a little bit of a practice. I tend to do some shapes, or I tend to do some drawing just to make sure that I have my thing going on, and then I'll delete them all. If you're trying to do this on a piece of traditional paper, sketch lightly, because paper does have memory. Eventually it'll get to the point where it'll hold whatever you're putting onto it. And if you're using a lead pencil or a mechanical pencil, the really thin, precise lines that you might get might incise on the paper. So you might want to keep that in mind when you're drawing. You don't want to do that. So I'm going to come up with something real quick, and I'm just going to talk through my process and how I draw. So I'm going to go ahead and take that to a 5. It looks pretty good. And I'm just going to try to sketch lightly, and I'm just going to kind of explain how I go about my sketching in a timely manner. So let's see if I can get something done in a timely manner. So let's get started. So when I start sketching, a lot of times I just kind of focus on the big shapes. And if you're a sketch artist, you might notice that that might be the easiest thing for you to do. Focus on the big pieces, not really worry about what's going on, especially if there's things involved, like, you know, the might be something that's more abstract, or if you just want to get like your concepts on there. Sometimes it's just easier to get your pieces on the paper, get your shapes all mapped out like I'm doing right now, and just kind of doing it in a real timely manner, trying to get your drawings down, see if you can get anything interesting out of it. And from here we can start adding, let's add characters. I'm gonna add a little fox, if I can add a fox. Let's see if I can get it looking kind of cute. Sometimes you can use reference if you feel like using reference. I'm not gonna use reference because for the time being I'm pretty hooked on Utopia. So I have the actual art book right next to me as I'm doing this, and I'm just going to do something. I don't know what we're gonna do yet, but it's coming out, as you can see. And the basic idea of sketching is to just kind of get those feelings out. You don't necessarily have to backtrack and erase anything, but I tend to erase sometimes when I'm drawing and sketching because I kind of want to get it perfect. In this particular concept and context, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of erasing because I'm just trying to get something down for you guys without going over too much time, because I kind of want to talk about this before I get started. So, okay, we have this here, that, and we got him in the corner. We're gonna go ahead and kind of do that, and then we're gonna take this, and I'm gonna quickly look at my fingers, and we're just gonna kind of do that, gonna do that, and he's gonna have a little thingy there, and he's going to come up like that. And so that, pull him in, and he's got a little face, give him a little bit of varying color like this. If we want to kind of work on his eyes and face, we can do something like that. He's got sunglasses on, kind of doing this, and he is probably at some type of monument or some type of Stonehenge type thing that I've just designed within the past couple of seconds. And that is, for the most part, our drawing. So as you can see, we have quite a bit going on here. I'm gonna go ahead and finish that up, and bam, and we have a sketch. We have a basic sketch on something that we might want to go into at a later time, and I'm just gonna sit here and talk about it for a little bit. I did this in a pretty quick manner. I don't know how long it took, probably about a couple of minutes, maybe about 3 or 4 minutes. But when you start sketching, a lot of things that you want to keep in mind mainly are being loose, not trying to worry too much about where things are placed, but just enough context and a little bit of detail, so when you're working on something you don't sit there and think too much on it. A sketch is just that, a sketch, and unless you're trying to make the sketch more detailed and more pronounced, you aren't really going to get a whole lot of sense out of a sketch. You're probably going to go back and you're going to put lines on it. You're probably going to draw and color over things to make them a little bit more solid. And that's just the basic idea of sketching. It's to let your brain and your creative juices just get out onto a piece of paper or whatever. When I sketch, for the most part, a lot of times I think of a word or I think of a concept and I just kind of go to town. Oftentimes also I work on what I enjoy the most. What do I like looking at? What do I like seeing? I like to see a lot of nature. I like to see a lot of anthro stuff. As you've seen, I have a lot of furry based stuff on my portfolio, and the biggest thing to me is how nature and how anthropomorphism coincide in a fantasy world. That's what I like to do, and that's what I revert to when I start drawing and when I start sketching. A lot of times your sketches will be what you find most interesting, and that is how you develop your own style and your own sense of purpose, especially when you're working on art. This is just a basic little sketch that we're going to probably elaborate on later, and eventually we're going to probably get into coloring and everything. We'll come back to that, but this is just how you set up and how you start an art piece. I'm going to probably get into sketching as a more detailed concept later, but for the time being, let's do another one. Let's do another one that we're going to probably do. Let's do a longer composition this time. Let's do about let's do 20. Nah, let's see if I can do 25. That's a little bit thinner, and we could probably take off this one, and we could probably do 1080 on this. Oh goodness gracious, that's the wrong one. Let's do 1080. Let's fix that. 1080. There we go. That's fine. And let's just do 2200. 2200 won't be too wide. There we go. Here we have a slightly bigger concept piece, and this time we're going to see what we can pull out of this. This would be something that would be more panoramic, something that you would see on probably a concept piece if you're looking at a I don't know, perhaps a scene from a movie or something like that. We're going to go ahead and get started on this one, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. Let's change the color though. Let's do red. Red would probably be a little easier to see, and we're going to figure it out. Now I'm gonna think about this for a moment, and I'm going to go ahead and jump in right after. Let's do a little bit bigger. 10 like that. That looks pretty good. And I like working in landscapes, so I tend to have my pieces longer than they are wider than they are long, so I tend to do that. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start sketching. I'm just gonna do some stuff here. You don't have to do a whole lot, but if you're into sketching, you can do something called auto drawing, which is basically just kind of letting your body do whatever, and you don't have to really care about what's going on. I'm not really doing that right now because I've got to try to think and figure out how I'm going to best exemplify what I'm into and what is good to draw. And you can see I'm kind of forming an abstract as I pull along. I'm gonna go ahead and do that, change that up, kind of some hope. Got some weird looking mountainsides or some plateaus over here on this side. Probably get one. Yeah, it looks good. All right, and we can even add a little bit of value to it. We could just take some hatching and do that. I could take some hatching on this one. Let's get a little bit going. All right, and then I can take over here and let's add something to the foreground. I'll talk about foregrounds and backgrounds later too, but this is a little bit of an overview. Being able to play with line thickness and understanding how something looks and where it is on the composition, and how it gives off a certain presence to your piece. So here we are. We have that. Let's switch to green because green and red are complements, and we're going to just kind of, give it a little bit of shrubbery, just a little bit, not a whole lot. Look good. Off. Go ahead and take it on there. I don't like how it darkens after, but I'm just lightly brushing my pencil on here, or my stylus on here, just to kind of give it a nice, interesting context. And here we have a Badlands scene. We could add a little bit more. Let's add some water. Let's see if I want to add some water, and I could take my blue and I could just Gonna spread it out throughout here. Maybe this will be the river right here. Maybe it branches off a bit. Like this. As it gets closer, it starts to build up. Make it see that it's starting to get closer. It's getting closer here. And let's just say it stops down here. And we can even add, I'd say we can probably add some figures. Let's add another figure. This time we can do something similar to what we did before. And I can take a big old chunk. Let's do a darker blue this time. And I'm gonna take a big old chunk out of here. Look at this guy. And I'm just going to go ahead and just give him a neck. Give him a little bit of a thing right this. He's got a big head. And that's the beauty about sketching. You can figure out the details later. If you don't like how something looks, you can kind of go ahead and just kind of deal with it later. I'm just going to go ahead and do a default that I like to do. I like to do cloaks and such. So this is what we got going on here. And it looks just kind of, you know, it's kind of imaginative. And presto changeo, we have ourselves... presto changeo, we have a basic understanding of what we're going to be doing for this piece too. Now, it doesn't look kind of cool. I kind of added the little character in as a last resort. So actually, let's remove him. I don't like that. Take him off. And see you later. Bye. Get out of here. Come on. I'm pressing undo really quickly. There we go. And here we go. We have another scene that does, it kind of contrasts this one. This one is a little bit more heavily oriented on the landscape and only the landscape. We took out the character, it didn't look too great, and you could see that a lot of detail was added to kind of give it a quaint little sense of self. Go ahead and do some extra here. And this is just what sketching is. Sketching is really useful. It helps you just kind of release whatever you have out into the masses. And I think it's a really good way to start this series, being able to let your creative juices flow and take what you've learned from my other videos or from other artists and from other teachers, mentors, and advisors, and taking it and putting it into something. Getting a sketchbook or a piece of paper is really, really useful, and it's cathartic. You get a chance to unwind and just not care. And don't be afraid to just leave marks on a piece of paper. Nobody should be judging you based on what you're drawing. Enjoy what you want to draw because you enjoy what you're drawing. That's the biggest takeaway from any artist and my biggest thing when it comes to art. So enjoy yourself when you're drawing, draw whatever you want, and just sketch it out if you're having trouble. Alright, that's pretty much the end of the video. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about the video. Give me suggestions on how to continue with the series. If you have something that you want to see, or if you're curious about something that I do, go ahead and tell me in the comments. I'll listen. Like the video if you like the video, and don't forget to subscribe. I make videos whenever I can. I'm a busy person, but I'll try to make my videos anytime I can. Alright, that's it everybody. Have a good day. I'll see you later. Peace.